Good morning. Good morning to all of you, and welcome to this session this morning on accelerating the attainment of sustainable wash services through effective coordination in Ghana. My name is Jeremiah Tengdem. I work with IRC Ghana as a water expert, and I shall be moderating this session this morning. At this point, I'd like to invite our Chief Director from the person of Mr. Noah Tufor from the Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources, who will be providing us the welcome. But before then, just to quickly acknowledge some of the traveling team from Ghana. We have colleagues from the National Development Planning Commission. I also have colleagues from the Regional Coordinating Council in the Ahafo region. And of course, we also have Nabil from the Conrad Hilton Foundation, through whose generous funding we've been able to do quite a bit of work around the SDG 6 in Ghana. So at this point, let me welcome Mr. Noah Tufor to the podium to give us a short welcome.
Thank you very much, and good morning once again. We want to welcome all our partners and visitors to this side event. We want to keep it very short, and I hope we'll be able to share what we've done so far by way of coordination, effective coordination of WASH activities in Ghana. I have, is Vida online? So I have Vida to also, can I put it on?
No, when she activates the mic, she will show on the screen.
So Vida, you can come on now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tumfu. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this very important session, a session that will provide an opportunity for us to discuss how we can accelerate the delivery of WASH services through a better coordination of how we deliver WASH, so that we can maximize the impacts of what we do. We deliberately chose this topic because we see it as a very important pillar if we want to achieve our targets of providing universal services to everyone. In Ghana, over the years, we've been working on the foundations required for effective delivery. We've been working on our policies. We have developed our new plans. And recently, as most of you might have heard about, we also had a presidential compact developed and signed by our president. All these mechanisms require that we put in good systems to be able to coordinate the institutional arrangements, to be able to align resources that comes into the sector, and to be able to track the progress of what we want to be able to achieve. Why is this important? We believe that in the delivery of WASH, it is a system, and within that system, things will not work out if things are not properly aligned and are not properly coordinated. In this session, we'll be sharing with you some of the mechanisms that we are putting in place as a country to be able to achieve that. We would have a presentation by the National Development Planning Commission on the WASH advisory paper that has been prepared to enhance coordination within and with other sectors. And we believe that it is important to coordinate effectively internally, and then also very important to coordinate how we connect with other sectors. Also, we'll be hearing a presentation by the Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources, throwing some light on our recently signed presidential compact. We see that as a good entry point with that presidential assent to be able to achieve the SDG targets that we have. But then you also realize that to be able to do that, we've identified about 8 sector ministries that we need to work closely with. And therefore, the ministry is going to share a bit about the compact that we have and how we will be aligning efforts to be able to do that. We believe that this is not a subject that is just unique to Ghana. It's a subject that is unique to other countries as well. So we'll be sharing also experiences with other countries. Please sit back and engage in our discussion as we share Ghana's experience of how we are navigating the maze of providing universal services through the mechanisms that we are putting in place for effective coordination. Thank you and welcome once again to our session.
Thank you, Vida. And so, like she said, we welcome you. We now want to invite NDPC to give us. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so Mr. Charles Koglo will present on the WASH Coordination Advice Paper. That is a product of the sector consultations and discussions in terms of putting together a framework for WASH coordination towards the attainment of SDG 6 in Ghana.
Good morning to you all. I hope you had a good rest last night. Good. So we'll just provide you with some highlights of efforts Ghana is making to strengthen coordination. I believe you all agree with me that coordination is very critical in a sector like WASH because it involves a lot of institutions. So the WASH paper has been put together as another effort at the country level to ensure that coordination works and delivers the targets of WASH as well as the SDGs. So what's the purpose of the paper? So the WASH advice paper aims to propose a structured approach to enhance inter and intra-organizational cooperation and governance. Also to provide targeted guidance to contribute towards addressing some of the identified coordination challenges. It suggests areas to strengthen and harmonize effort of all WASH stakeholders, and also foster collaborative atmosphere for policy implementation and service delivery, as well as promote a coordinated and integrated response to the WASH challenges. So we must indicate that there's a lot of work that has been done in the front of coordination. Some good results have been achieved, and it's very important that we sustain it. And one way to do this is also some of the recommendations that have been provided by the WASH advice paper. If you look at the paper, it provides some necessary conditions for effective coordination at the country level. So it talks about having a clear and shared vision among all the institutions, which is very key so that they can work together. There is a need for a mechanism for information sharing and joint planning. There's also a critical need to recognize the roles and expertise of various institutions so that there can be a very clear role and also know who does what, when, so that that can also enhance coordination and take away some of the conflicts. The need for regular monitoring, evaluation, and learning, and of course, commitment to a collective impact. So these are some of the key foundations that has been identified by the WASH advice paper. and it provides a basis for some of the recommendations that is contained in the document. Coordination has become very, very critical. I was in a side event yesterday, and I think even though it wasn't about coordination, there was a lot of talk about coordination. So it tells us that coordination is critical, and it's critical for Ghana as well. For us also, it has become critical because we are near the end of the SDGs, and we need to accelerate our efforts. Also, at the country level, there's been some SDG target that has been prioritized, and that includes target 6.2. There's also a lot of talk about the UN transition areas. And at the country level, there's also been conceptualization to include WASH into the transition, even though that is not part of the global 6 that has been identified. So what that tells us is that we need to take coordination very, very seriously. We need to do whatever it takes to make it work so that it can deliver the benefits that we all seek to achieve. At the back of this, the National Development Planning Commission, as has been mentioned, was able to convene all stakeholders with the support of key stakeholders under the Hilton Foundation grant, so that they come out with some key recommendations to improve upon the issue about coordination, so that we can achieve the WASH targets. And these recommendations are what we are going to share with you. Now, coordination is critical because we've seen that it's one of the key ways we can also accelerate the attainment of the various targets. Just to provide an example, work was done by the National Development Planning Commission to look at an indicator such as household toilet coverage, and to compare if things continue the way they are, which is referred to as, in this study, as the business as usual scenario, compared to the path to target, what we need to do. Now, you see the green line tells us that if we do things differently, if we improve coordination works effectively. It's possible we can move the progress to 100%, where we are going to achieve 4.5% on an average to the end of the SDGs deadline. But if things are left the way they are, we may get somewhere around 70%. So that tells us that this endeavor is a very critical one. And as much as possible, we have to do whatever we can to ensure that coordination works. What are some of the challenges that were identified by stakeholders, the effects that was also identified, and some of the recommendations as contained in the advice paper? So there's still a need to improve institutional collaboration. So institutional collaboration is still limited, and that is leading to fragmented initiatives. Everybody is doing his own, working very hard in different silos sometimes, and doesn't help sometimes. There's also issues of inconsistent tracking of sector progress. So the stakeholders came out with some of the following recommendations. So in terms of fragmented initiatives, you are looking at the need to expand the water and sanitation sector working group, which has been working very hard, to include other institutions that are also working on WASH. So that is one of the key recommendations. Also facilitate the dialogue and consensus building process to identify common WASH goals and develop shared agendas. Also came up. On inconsistent tracking of sector progress, the recommendations include standardized processes to align WASH policies, development programs, and district development plans, and WASH-related plans to that of other institutions. And there's a need at the local level or regional level. You have focal persons that will also assist with the work of WASH, and establish a coordination platform for utility services on infrastructure management. The other challenges includes low resource mobilization and optimization, which creates problems for scalability and sustainability. And the recommendation coming out is to develop strategies to effectively promote resource sharing and mobilization among allied institutions involved in WASH programs. And also to develop a framework for coordinated investment from multiple partners and resources allocation. The third main issue identified from the stakeholders' engagement was limited stakeholder engagement and public awareness. We sometimes create barriers to community participation because once community members and public is not too much informed, it's difficult for them to provide their support. So the recommendations include promote effective local and community level engagement, and also to broaden WASH provision in the national development policy frameworks, which also very important. Now the last issue or challenge I want to share with you is the fragmented data standardization and reporting. And that has resulted in sometimes ineffective data integration, where you have different institutions of WASH reporting the same indicator and providing different figures. So here, some of the recommendations include establish a functional technical link between the main ministry who is responsible for all this, who is the Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources, and all other planning authorities, including the local authorities. And also, they need to roll out the SIS and its subsidiary MAE platforms, strengthen the MAE platforms so that they can talk to each other, so that this can be resolved, so that we can have a singular source for reporting progress to take away some of the confusion. And all this, when done, it is believed that we can improve upon the coordinate, strengthen it, and we can achieve a lot. Most of these recommendations are timed to be implemented in 2025. And the ministry is going to help us in leading us in doing this. So to conclude, we intend implementing this WASH paper extensively next year. We are using this platform to also invite all support that will be needed technically as well, so that some of these recommendations can be implemented. And it's timely also because we'll be listening to a presentation very soon on the presidential compact that has been signed. And once these coordination issues are improved, once we are able to strengthen coordination, it provides a very good enabling environment for us to also achieve the compact. We want to just end to reflect a little bit on an African proverb, which says that if you want to go fast, you go alone. But if you want to go far, you go together. And that's sort of illustrated in, I think there's a problem with, but I think we can get illustrated in a picture. So we all want to resolve to go very, very far. So we'll go together and we'll continue to work hard at strengthening the coordination efforts so that we can achieve the SDGs. We just share some few pictures. It also didn't come very well. Maybe when we get the slides. So these are some of the participants at the stakeholders forum. And we want to thank you very much for your attention.
Let's give Charles another round of applause. Yep. Okay, so thanks very much, Charles, for that very insightful presentation on the WASH advice paper. So move on to the next, which is on the Ghana Presidential Compact. So I'd like to invite Engineer Kobna J.C. Doku, who's the Director for Water at the Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources in Ghana, to present key highlights of the Ghana WASH Presidential Compact.
Good morning once again. And my job this morning is to let you know what's in the compact. Basically, it's going to talk about what we need to do to ensure that the compact come the year 2030. What's the objective of the compact? It's positioning sustainable access to improve sanitation, water, and hygiene services, to stimulate the attainment of the SDGs and socio-economic development of Ghana, as aspired within our national development planning framework. The rationale is just simple. to make WASH more or less the enabling environment towards the attainment of the SDGs come the year 2030. That's the rationale for this compact, and it was signed on August 28th this year by essentially the President with the UN bodies. As already alluded by my previous speakers, WASH is quite paramount in everything that we do. If we look at critically the SDGs, to attain all the 17 other goals, goal 6, which on water and sanitation plays a key role. And that's one thing we want to ride upon as we strive towards the attainment of the SDGs come the year 2030. Per our scenario in Ghana, as business as usual, there's weak coordination among stakeholders, no clarity, duplication of efforts, which at times leads to a high transaction cost of how we do things in the country. Even though we have a framework for coordination, its implementation has not been that cordial. It is quite, most of the time, fraught with so many challenges because of duplication of efforts, people trying to have kind of silo thinking, thinking about their own turfs. Turf wars pertain very much in the sector. But that's one thing we want to address as a country. Even though there may be some issue of capacity challenges in the sector, there's still not much more needs to be done as we try to attain the broader goals of the compact. So when thinking aloud and thinking about what we need to do, as I said earlier on, let's just go 6 is at the heart of the SDGs, as I said earlier on. So how do we change the current scenario to enable us to attain the compact, the broad vision of the compact? Because the vision by the year 2030, each person in Ghana must have adequate access to sustainable wash services delivery. No matter your creed, your color, your race, your type, whatever you need to be, you must have access to sustainable wash service delivery. So for the period, you need to have think cross-sectorially, not about silo thinking, not about sectors, but what our sector impacts on the other sector. That's what we need to bring up on board. So in the WASH compact, we worked with all these ministries to ensure that the goals in the compact should be owned by all, not just by only one sector, but it should be owned by all several sectors in the country. Because whatever we do have its rippling effect on another sector. For instance, if you look at the goal 4, which is on education, if we're able to provide wash in schools, it increases what enrollment in schools. So that's one thing both the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Water and Sanitation must sit together to address. So at least when we are planning together to know that when we are putting up school blocks, when we are putting up school buildings, the issue of wash must be addressed and must be included in the planning, design of everything. For goal 1 of ending reducing no poverty, yes, wash where water goes, enhance what socio-economic development. So how do we ensure at least we're able to bring water to the cottage industries for them to also to develop? So when we are set up new communities, what do we bring on board water aspect, sanitation aspect, so at least it can thrive or can drive economic growth in all these areas? Health. The time has come for us to move from just only looking at curative measures, but look at preventive measures, because water and health goes hand in hand. So these are some of the things we want to bring on board. That's what I've been enshrined in a compact, because as I said, we must think cross-sectorially, not just only our sector, but whatever we do in our sector also impacts on other sectors. So one main key aim of the compact, as I enshrined in the compact, is what? For us to focus on areas and commitments of strengthening institutional and sectoral connection to ensure that yes, we have a vibrant arrangement of what networks in place. That when the ministers meet at cabinet, everything they discuss at cabinet, they think about broader discussions on consensus building among all the state agencies and set players to enhance what efficiency in how we do things. Culture a range of activities to achieve increased efficiency. As I said earlier, if we are trying to do roads, we are trying to do schools, but if we plan activity in such a line that everything what one do as a sector impacts on another sector. So we are putting up school blocks, we are putting up irrigation systems, irrigation schemes. The role of water and sanitation must find it prominent in it, so at least we have the broader outcome goal of what the things we want to do as a country. We want to develop a multi-sector action towards what integrated water service in the country, right from basic sanitation, promotion of voluntary hygiene behaviors, and water resources management. Broader thinking, broader sectoral goals and plans is the way to go as we move along the line to attain the SDG and national plans. And also we need to align our programs and all national programs to one single plan, national plan. We have developed what we call the Ghana Wash Sector Development Program, which we are trying to drive us towards meeting our aiming goals at the year 2030. So every player, whether from the district system, the regional system, the development partners, government must all try to own to that document, because it gives us case-by-case planning scenario for each year, what we need to put in place, the number of things we have to put in place each year for members to attain our goals. So once all is said and done, what do you want to attain at the end of the year? these are the desired outcomes. That yes, as one vibrant sector of leadership coming all the way from the presidency, that will drive everybody along the chain. So at least government will now be the visible leader in place, focused leadership at the highest level to drive what the account of wash in the country, also to move along all the relevant investments in the country. So the institutions for the next work we've done is quite critical for us as a sector as we try to move attain our goals. Also overcome any inertia that means because they say the last mile is the most difficult mile. As we are trying to get close to the SDG target. Anything that will draw us back, we need to overcome it, and we come from out from in that front, in that force as we move on. New initiatives as we move along, try to renew our commitments, the sham and shake, the technique commitments, the kind of leave no one behind, should be able to attribute, do it and do it well. And also the flow of new financing investments. If you look at reports right now, funding from ODS is quite dwindling, and if you want to attain our targets, we cannot do business as usual. We need funding from the private sector. How do you bring the private sector for us to attain our targets? All these are some of the things we need to put in place. So all in all, the compact is here. It is quite broad. It's trying to govern the support for all sector players, government institutions to attain our goals come the year 2030. There's something we have signed on to, and it's something we are not looking back. We are going to make sure that by the year 2030 and beyond, wash service delivery in Ghana will be sustainable and affordable for all. So I'll end just one small saying to buttress what we are saying. Even though in we are all drops, but when we come together, we can become a mighty ocean. And together, if all our effort in place as a country, as individuals, as stakeholders, we can do more to attain our goals as a sector, as a country, come the year 2030. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Governor. I think we can do better for him. Okay, so I think we've listened to two very powerful presentations, one on the WASH advice paper, and then the other one on the presidential compact. So we are going to have a panel to dive deep into some of the highlights from these two key presentations that we've listened to this morning. So I'm going to invite the panel members to the podium. So the first is Mr. Noah Tufo, our Chief Director, Tumfo, our Chief Director from Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources. We also have Ms. Patience Ampoma, Senior Planning Analyst at the National Development Planning Commission. We also have Adamat Nagaga, from a Senior Environmental Health Officer and Sanitation, and also a Sanitation Coordinator at the Ministry of Water and Environment from Uganda. Then, of course, last but not least, we have Vida Juti, the Country Director for IRC, who is joining on Zoom. Hi, Auntie Vida. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. I'm here.
Okay, all right. Let me try to... Okay. All right, so we have our panelists seated. I'm going to go to the first question for our Chief Director. Chief Director, so we've heard quite a bit from the presentations that were made today, specifically with the presidential compact that was signed recently. I want your perspective on how the ministry intends to leverage on that to be able to give further impetus to the framework that's already in place for coordination. We've seen that there are a few gaps here and there, but how can the presidential compact help to address many of these gaps that we have in our current framework for coordination and give it a much bigger push?
Thank you very much. From our perspective as a ministry, we recognize the fact that our partners are spread across through the local authorities, development partners, and CSOs. So the strategy has been to look at the key coordinating institutions such as the NDPC, the Ghana Statistical Service, to try to do planning, develop a framework for planning across the country with them, so that we bring everybody on board, so that the plans that are developed at the local level speak to the issues we have well laid out in the presidential compact. So for us, we want to do this coordination with all the key partners, so that at the end of the day, we can monitor implementation and take corrective action as we go along. Granted that we have only 6 years to go to achieve our SDG targets. So these have been our strategic roles. And you would recall my colleague mentioned a number of stakeholders that we're dealing with. And for us, the list doesn't end there. As and when we identify key roles of other partners, we try to engage them together and we move ahead. So that's the strategy we've adopted as a sector lead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief Director. So I'll turn my attention now to patients from the National Development Planning Commission. We know NDPC is at the heart of coordinating across the different sectors in respect of all the SDG goals. I wanted to find out also from you, I mean, given the work you've done recently in terms of looking back on the framework that was in place, bringing the different sectors connected to SDG 6 together, how you want to do things differently going forward, and also drawing on your recent experience in terms of the use of the master planning approach as another innovative way of helping to coordinate the different stakeholders and partners within the sector. How would you say has been the progress around that, and what and how do you intend to take that forward?
Thank you very much, and thank you for having us. So with the National Development Planning Commission, we see planning as very, very key when it comes to WASH. The WASH sector in Ghana is very viable and has a lot of potentials, but there's a need for us to harness these potentials. And we believe that some of the overlapping that we've been experiencing when it comes to our roles within the sector can, in the long haul, affect resources that are spent. We don't want to continue the issue of chartering similar courses or chartering similar interventions. So for example, where an NGO is doing a similar thing and then another can just leverage on that, but because we don't have that strong coordination approach, everyone just goes in his or her way. So that is the more reason why we thought it wise from our coordinating arena to bring on board sectors that matter, institutions that matter, so that we can put our heads together and see how we can address some of these overlapping and these gaps that we find in the sector. So that's aside. But besides that, we also have targets to attain. As a nation, we have subscribed to the SDGs. We did for MDGs, and there's actually the need for us to advance when it comes to the attainment of these international commitments, and even that of the national commitments we have in our plans. In view of that, the country last year, we did an assessment to check you know, how we can prioritize some of the targets which has been presented. And in prioritization, we have 6.2. And 6.2 have more than 136 synergies in terms of the synergies across, you know, the other targets within the SDGs. And all these things, I think, put us in a position for us to do more than we are doing as a nation. So when we check the advice paper, we proffered the need for us to look at our planning process when it comes to WASH. We have assessed how WASH is reflected in our plans, and it is not holistic in nature. So there's a need for us to first and foremost maybe target it from the planning process, also target it from our national policy formulation, where our policies are also not in silos, but you know, everything is anchored on a unified goal or vision for the sector. And then from there, it you know, it dovetails into the local plans that we have, and out of the sector plans that, you know, we also churn out. So working in this holistic approach will help manage the multiplicity of stakeholders that we have, and also manage how we are thinking through in terms of the interventions we are working out to attain our target. So that aside, we as part of the planning process, we've also seen the need, you know, for us to extend our planning period. So normally with the national planning period is in the medium term, which is 4 years. But we've also seen the viability of a long-term plan, which has to do with the master plans for WASH. So it's something that we have been talking to our local authorities to also address or apprise their minds to, so that they can also leverage on that opportunity, plan in that long perspective, implement in that medium-term perspective, which at the end of the day is also anchored in the national planning processes. So I think I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patience, for those thoughts. So at this point, I will turn to Vida, who's joining us online. Right, I'm sure you've heard all that government had said in terms of the structures in place, the systems for coordination, both from the perspective of our lead ministry and also from NDPC. As NGOs, what do you think could be the unique role that we can play to be able to support government to effectively operationalize this planning framework? And you also feel like there are areas that we could do things differently so that we can have a better and effective delivery of WASH services in Ghana? Maybe if we could just reflect on that, what are the role the NGO or civil society could play to complement what government is already doing in that direction?
Thank you very much, Jerry. And I think that the structures that we have now are establishing the critical pillars that is required to align NGOs and development partners support. The compact that has been signed is directly linked, aligned with the sector development plan that has recently been developed. And so that provides a very good frame for governments to lead in coordinating whoever is in the sector and the kind of support that is being provided. In the discussions with the ministry after the signing of the compact at the high-level meeting to introduce the compact to sector players, the ministry also aligned a number of measures that they want to undertake. One is through this process, coordinate a sector country support package for implementation of the plan. This is something that the development partners and NGOs have all bought into, and so we'll be working with governments to ensure that that framework includes what the NGOs and development partners also bring to the table. In driving this process, we also can provide technical support to the ministry in the management of the process. One of the other key things is also advocacy and encouraging all the development partners to be part of this process. I think that the way the ministry also went about this compact, right from the onset, also prepares that collaboration and alignment. This compact was not signed just by the government, but it was signed with development partners, represented by the UN resident coordinator. And even before we got to that point, there was a lot of discussions among development partners to be able to get that compact co-signed. And so it is very right for us to support that. But if we'll be able to move beyond what we have now, it will be good that we understand some of the factors that really affect the system's effectiveness. So you might have the systems, but they can be very also ineffective. And so understanding that will be critical. We need to interrogate the roles and responsibilities within the sector, and where there are overlaps, see how we can streamline that so that we can minimize the duplication. We need to relook at how we track progress in the sector. Currently, the ministry has a process of tracking progress in the sector. The work on the sector information system needs to go on to bring it to completion so that we can track and be able to report on the results of the investment in the sector. Financing, at the moment, if you look at the way we do our budgeting and appropriation of resources, it goes to every ministry. So with all the ministries that we have lined up, how are we going to ensure that even in the allocation of the resources and the implementation by the various agencies, there's a clear mechanisms for us to be able to look at the investment in the sector through the ministry and by other agencies, and collectively tracking where the resources are going to and directing them to where they are most needed. So we are on a good path. We acknowledge that government is doing very well. And we also acknowledge that government is going to put in the measures to ensure that all these building blocks that support effective coordination of the sector are in place. So we would like to commend our ministry, NDPC, for driving this agenda, and as CSOs, we would work towards aligning whatever we do with the processes that are being led by governments.
Thank you very much, Vida, for your perspective on how CSOs or NGOs and development partners can work with government. And I think, particularly for IRC, that's what we've been about in all the work that we do with government, supporting government to strengthen the country systems for wash delivery. Martha from the Ministry of Water and Environment, Uganda, you've heard the Ghanaian story about the work that we are doing around sector coordination to achieve the SDG 6 and the challenges that we are still facing. Also like to hear from your side some experiences that you can share with us in terms of what has worked and what has also not worked. Because one of the essence of this session also is for us to learn from others so that we can improve what we are doing back in Ghana. So what are your reflections, having heard from us and maybe looking back on what you do in Uganda?
Thank you very much, Ghana, for allowing us this opportunity to share our experience as Uganda. In Uganda, WASH, or water sanitation and hygiene, is not an effort that belongs to one government agency. It rather belongs to many. As we might say, the mandate is scattered among several ministries. For example, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Water and Environment, Ministry of Education, and all of us are taking up bits and pieces to deliver WASH to the rest of the country. And in that space, we have allowed several other stakeholders to do their part, including civil society and private sector. So inevitably, we cannot not coordinate. And we have seen good fruits resulting out of the coordination efforts that have been set up both at the national and the subnational level. About 2015, we adopted a new way of doing things, and we are now working with programs. We have moved away from sectors based on our national development plan, based on the Vision 2040 that we have. We plan based on 5 years. And we are now running our National Development Plan 3, which will be concluded sometime next year as we move into National Development Plan 4. And under National Development Plan 3, that is when we started to do a program approach. And under that, we as WASH have been put under the Human Capital Development Program. Inevitably, all the ministries that are contributing to the WASH sector are under that program. So we are not only coordinating by default as a way of nature of WASH as a subject matter, but also by design as government. We have been put together under the same program, and we are working towards the achievement of universal access to WASH. So we have put in place some mechanisms at national level, as I pointed out earlier. We have an interministerial WASH coordination committee, which is headed by the technical heads of each of the ministries. And we have leadership that rotates among the permanent secretaries from time to time. And below which we have a steering committee that does the day-to-day operations to see that the works of the ministries is coordinated at that level. In the Ministry of Water specifically, we have a sector liaison department that makes sure our donors, our partners, like the civil society organizations, and government efforts are all resonating and working in sync. For sanitation specifically, we have a sanitation working group that champions the cause for sanitation and hygiene so that it does not continue to be carried together along with the WASH. As usual, it gets lost. And so we have one specifically for sanitation and hygiene in that regard. Relatedly, we have one specifically for hand washing because also it, many times when it's carried along the sanitation, it suffers neglect in one way or the other. On the political side, we have a coordination forum among our parliamentarians called the Uganda Parliamentary Forum for WASH, and they're still doing efforts mainly to do with advocacy at that level to ensure that WASH remains high on the agenda. And regarding our global relationships with these frameworks that exist at the global scene, like the Sanitation and Water for All, the GLAS, the GMP, we have still a country team that works to see how we respond and how we work with those global frameworks and produce country reports that speak to the sector as a whole. Now, the coordination is not happening only on the government side or intergovernment, inter-CSO, but also on the CSO side, we have an umbrella body that is called the Uganda Water and Sanitation Network for NGOs working in the WASH space. So that body helps us to bring together all the NGOs that are working in the WASH space, and they track what is happening, who is doing what, where, and how it is being done. And government has a head in that as well. We sit on the board. We have a representative on the board to see how USNet is working. Relatedly, in the humanitarian space, we have a mechanism called the WASH platform, which is coordinating the efforts in the refugee response. As you all know, Uganda hosts a huge amount of refugees, and that's not about to stop. So we realize as a WASH sector, we still need to do coordinated efforts in that regard, and we went ahead to develop a comprehensive refugee response framework regarding WASH. It's coming to an end about next year, and we are going to review it to see how we move forward into the next coming years as we coordinate the refugee response. At the subnational level, we have some coordination mechanisms also at the regional level, where different numbers of local governments are clustered in a certain group so that the response or the interventions at that level can be coordinated, relatedly also from the CSO side. Lastly, at the local government, we also have a body that brings together the different players in every local government, whether from government, we have the different departments at that level in the district, the health department, the water department, the education, name it, and then also the CSOs that operate in that space in a specific local government. All that has been put in place, but we cannot say that it's all rosy. We appreciate the results that have come out of it. Good things have come. We've been able to produce annual reports that reflect all our contributions as government, as CSOs, and all that. We coordinate in planning and implementation, advocacy, and that kind of thing. But we realize that there are challenges that come with it, and we recognize that coordination is a huge effort. As you all know, it is very resource heavy in terms of people. Everyone must be interested and be ready to put in the work. And that is not easy, as you may all know. It comes with very huge requirements in terms of time. People must be able to sit and put in the work. And needless to say, the resources to bring people together sometimes becomes a bit difficult to be able to bring people together. And sometimes we have also witnessed challenges to do with competing priorities regarding what government is saying and what the donors are saying, especially from the CSO side. If we've guided as government and said we are moving in this direction, we have a challenge with one of our partners in Uganda that's experiencing a challenge where their donor is saying, you are investing at a very high cost. The per capita cost of investment is really high. And can you lower it to match your other country programs in other places? And the partner is saying, well, look here, our government has guided that we need to move away, for example, from point sources and do more piped systems. So they have that kind of challenge that's coming up. And we always, from time to time, have to come in as government to engage even the donors at that level to understand that we have chosen to go the path of piped systems and water on the premises. So such things come up and constrain the coordination efforts. But I must say that it's something that's working well on the whole, although there's still a lot of work that we can do to improve it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for those experiences from Uganda. Yeah, really very detailed, and I can tell a very elaborate structure right from national to subnational down to the local authority level. So at this point, we would like to open up the conversation to those of you in the audience who have graciously joined this session. So we have the mic in the middle, so if you have any questions, contributions, or some experience you want to share, feel free to do so. Use the mic in the middle. Our panelists are still available. If you have a specific question to any of them, you can do so as well. So your name and maybe your organization.
Good morning. My name is Henry Northover. I'm a freelance consultant. Thank you very much for the presentations. Some really interesting and exciting work happening. Really great to hear about it. I was interested in Ghana's presidential compact and the impact that that has having of the head of state putting his name down to a piece of paper, basically. If you can just say a little bit about what that might mean. because I have in mind in 2012 in Liberia, there was also a presidential compact then. And I remember during the signing ceremony, President Sirleaf Johnson was saying, the problem is we'll sign anything, or we often sign anything, but the problem is maintaining momentum. And I was just wondering, I was curious whether you anticipate whether the President's office is going to be involved in driving through progress, or whether actually the expectation is that the President will hear reports occasionally, but won't be actively in the driving seat. So yeah, any reflections you've got about the Presidential Compact and the impact it has in driving forward progress? Thank you.
Okay, maybe we'll take a few more, then maybe you can respond. Okay.
Hi, good morning. I'm Kofi from Path, based in Ghana. So my question's got to do with something Vida mentioned when she was speaking. She talked about the sector information system that's tracking progress and resources that are being committed in our journey towards meeting our SDG target. You know, oftentimes targets are missed not because we don't do the work, but because we don't spread the work across the different areas of the country strategy. So I wanted to find out, where is this information system? How would the partner know what's going on where? How would they know where the gaps are, where investment is needed, and what's being left behind, so we can try and cover all the spaces so the progress is more impactful in that way. So I'd like to hear a bit more about that tracking, information tracking system that the ministry has. Thank you.
Thank you. Kofi.
My name is John Akudago, and I have a question as well as a suggestion to make to the team. WASH is actually an infrastructural issue and a behavior issue. And for behavior to actually take place, it has to take place at the point of the use. So we cannot protect our water resources without the communities practicing protection. And I want to know, what is the role of the traditional authorities in this present compact that you are designing? And then the second thing is, to what extent are you going to decentralize this information to the point that the communities would understand that they are stakeholders? Because stakeholders cannot just be at the top alone. We are not going to achieve SDG 6 from just the top. So to what extent will this information decentralize itself all the way to the community level, so that they can be actually the great partners? They are not bringing money, but they are the biggest stakeholders that you can talk of. Thank you.
We'll take one last one before we get responses from the panel. Anyone ready? Okay.
Thank you very much for the presentation. It was great. I just wanted to know a bit more about, you mentioned some of the short-term, medium-term, and long-term impacts. I'd like to know a bit more about how that will look on the ground with this coordination plan, how the short-term impacts will look in reality. Thank you.
Okay, so thanks very much for those questions. So, Director, I think you have two questions.
Okay.
One on the presidential compact.
And the SIS?
The SIS, okay, it was directed at by, so the one was whether, I mean, what it means in terms of translating the compact into actual results.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Ground. And then the second one was the role of traditional authorities.
Okay. Thank you very much. The presidential compact has come at a time when, in 2010, there was a ministerial compact signed. At the time the 2010 compact was signed, we had two separate ministers dealing with WASH. 2017, His Excellency the President created a ministry to bring together all the wash subsectors. So we now have a ministry responsible for sanitation and water resources. Now, we have, together with partners, developed this WASH compact. So it is a commitment of the government of the day to WASH. And the way it's developed, it's not the president coming up with his idea. It's a collection of all the activities we have collectively agreed on to achieve that. So if for nothing at all, it becomes a document or it becomes a focal point for rallying support to achieve the WASH targets. That's the way we see it. Now, the issue about local authorities being part of the process. We, as NDPC said, we are, as a policy unit, we engage all partners in developing our policies, but we recognize that implementation of these policies are done at the local level. And so they are all part of the process of planning. I did indicate that we, together with the NDPC, developed the framework for planning across the country. And for the first time, we've tried consciously to bring up the WASH issues, to get the local authorities, to get the chiefs, to get everybody input into that planning process. So that is how we've gotten them involved. And plans are owned by the local authorities. We only provide the framework for the planning, and we help them and support them to implement these plans. So they are embedded in the whole process. For the SIS, Sector Information System, is work in progress, but we are hoping to get a dashboard so that anybody can access information we have in there, interrogate it. It's going to be a very interactive system. And so it's work in progress in terms of the sector information system. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director. Patience, there was a question on the short-term, long-term planning and what the impact is on local WASH.
Thank you very much. But I also wanted to just throw some few light on the compact. So in the previous compacts, I know we normally have an issue when it comes to implementation. Implementation has always been an issue. I think the previous impact, as I mentioned, there are some strides that were made, and one of it has to do with the uptake of CLTS, community-led total sanitation. It was something that we really wanted to champion, and I think the country, has done significantly well when it comes to the uptake of that. Though, we still have issues with open defecation. So we agree that even in our normal planning processes, we have all these nice ideas which we put on paper. But when it comes to implementation, it's normally a challenge. Typical district plan analysis will tell you that some of the medium-term implementation gets to 50% implementation. So that is the truth about this whole matter. But we want to do things differently going forward. That is why we want to really leverage or harness the coordination potentials that we have in the country. There are lots of interventions flying around, but how do we streamline them, so that we can minimize the overlaps and then minimize the waste, we are experiencing in terms of resource, mobilization and use. So that is the more reason why we are hampering more on coordination to see to which extent, we can really harness the little resources that we have. So that aside, when it comes to the National Development Planning Commission, we are here on board to also support with the local level participation when it comes to WASH. So with the local level participation, we are supporting the ministry because we bring out guidelines for plan preparation, and plan preparation is done in medium term, which is 4 years. So I think our policy framework is ending in next year, 2025. So from 2026 to 2029, the next planning phase or preparation starts and its implementation. So that will be the next medium-term plan. So we bring out a guide, and as part of the guide, we detail the areas in terms of sectors, and then the focus and priorities that our local level should focus on when it comes to planning. So here we are engaging with the ministry so that WASH is not left behind, as it has been the case. So there will be a proper content in terms of the reflection of WASH in the medium term. But when it comes to the long term, we don't necessarily have a long-term plan for the nation. We have just a long-term perspective. It's something that we are working on. But we are also encouraging the districts with the inception of master plan preparation, WASH master plan preparation. The Planning Commission has seen the potency of it and seen it as a very useful tool that attracts investment for our at the local level. So we are advocating and encouraging as many local levels that can, come on board to prepare master plans. So that provides a more of a long-term targets or long-term objectives or long-term interventions, unlike the medium term, which is just 4 years. So in present times, there's a particular region, Ahafo, which has 100% coverage of the master plan, besides the medium term that they prepare. NDPC is also supporting about 10 districts to also prepare 10 master plans. There are other interventions or master plans that are also around the northern part of the nation, and so on and so forth. So this is just encouraging them. When you have the master plan, it's easier to actually prepare your medium-term plan. You just pick the necessary information for the medium-term plan anytime the medium-term plan preparation begins. So that, in its aspect, is the impact or the reflection of what medium-term plans actually mean, and then what's the long-term plan, which is the master plan in reference also mean. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We still have any outstanding question? We have just 5 more minutes for questions from the audience, and then we can wrap up this panel discussion phase. So it can be snappy with the question.
Hi, my name is John. I have probably a 2-in-1 question. I want to say thank you for organizing this coordination. I really appreciate it because coordination is an important thing. For the Ghana team, when I think about coordination, I think about a lead that is helping to bring different parties together. And I want to find out from you, who is the lead in this coordination? Or is there a committee between the Ministry of Water and Sanitation and the National Development group? How does that work out? And then for Martha, just some insights. Coordination requires lots of communication between different parties, meeting together, and you mentioned the limitations of resources. From your experience, can you just share any insights on how frequent those meetings have been, and how frequent you think those meetings should be to ensure that coordination is effective and like all parties are aware of what's happening and that coordination is effective? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Catherine, and thank you again for a wonderful panel. I'm from Saha Global, which is a last mile service provider in northern Ghana, and I had a question about, it's an election year, so I was wondering if there are what the plan is for continuity throughout an election, especially at the district level with high levels of turnover in personnel. So thank you.
Okay, so I think this will be our final batch of questions.
Okay.
Right, you want to address the election?
Yes,
Yeah,
he asked about the lead institution.
Yes.
Yeah, the ministry is the lead institution, and we have a sector working group. The sector working group brings on board all partners, including the coalition of NGOs, the DPs, all the other sector ministries and agencies involved in WASH. But beneath the sector working group, we have technical working group for water and a technical working group for sanitation. And so the technical groups have the directorates within the ministry as the lead, and they bring on board all the other sector players. And as they work, they report to the sector working group. The sector working group meets every quarter. So in a year, we're talking about 4 meetings. But the technical working group works throughout. And so as we meet as a sector working group, we receive the feedback. And we work closely with the National Development Planning Commission, the Ghana Statistical Service as strategic partners in all this. Yes. The other question had to do with
no, elections. And
that one. I'll continue. I'll let Pat respond to that one.
Continuity of interventions.
Okay. So, NDPC, in our reviews here is every year we expect districts to prepare their annual progress reports, and these reports provide information on how far they are implementing their plans on an annual basis, which is the medium-term plan. And over the past years, over a decade, I'm sure, we have been analyzing projects that's, I think we term as white elephants. Some get started and they are stalled, and they keep reporting on it as, you know, the projects are not moving. And sometimes you ask, what is the reason for it? And a lot of the reasons have to do with some political underpinnings and with some of these projects. So there are interventions now ongoing within the country under the public PFM, the public financial management, that in order to have value for money, some of these issues we are facing, particularly at the local level, should come to a halt. And that should start with the project's implementation or program implementation. It is technical in nature, and it has to do with the well-being of the district, and shouldn't be tagged by individuals. So we're tackling it first and foremost with our reporting. All projects need to be entered in these reports, which is the annual progress report. And we have to know who is a financier, who is the investor, all analysis of a project have to be given, even if it's a philanthropist, implementing a particular project, that needs to be entered. And the next stage is taking it through the financial systems, so that you don't find an individual putting up a project just because the individual finds a need, or the individual thinks a community has a particular need. And I'm saying this because over time,
if you can wrap up.
Yes.
Next 1 minute.
Okay. I'm saying it because a lot of the corporate has to do with WASH. Where we find out that some group of people don't have water, maybe a church can come and donate a water pump or water point, but in terms of sustainability, or it's in terms of even communicating this project to the district assembly, it is not done. So what I'm just trying to communicate is that we are trying to address it through reporting, and the districts have a role to play in identify all projects, within their vicinity and reporting on them. So those that are not tied to them, they can do a follow-up to address that. So that is work in progress. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt, I think there was a question. I don't know if you can do that in 1 minute. We're just out of time.
Yes, I will do that under a minute. Thank you very much. It was a pretty short question.
Yeah.
And I would say that the frequency of these meetings varies depending on the target people that we aim at for these. Those that really aim for the highest, like the permanent secretaries, those meet once a year. And the rest of the subcommittees keep working and report to them. But there are others that are more frequent, mostly quarterly, but some happen every 2 months. So depending on the subject and how available the people are. But I must say that with the coming of COVID, we were given a lot more options. Now, the virtual option allows us to meet without spending a lot of resources, and we're really taking advantage of that. But also the rotational hosting, to be able to spread the burden to the different organizations. That also helps us a lot, where we rotate that this organization is hosting the meeting this time, and then it's passed on to another organization the next time. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, is there any question that probably in 1 minute you wanted to provide some additional information on?
No, I think that we are out of time. But just to say that in all these, systems leadership is key. And the question that had to do with how we would continue the commitment from the president's level, we have worked it in such a way that it will transcend beyond political boundaries. As has been explained, the compact is linked to all our policies, our existing plans, and now we are looking into mechanisms for how we can drive it. So hopefully, we'll be able to achieve the results that we had with the 2010 Presidential Compact that enabled us to achieve the MDGs and also make substantial progress for having this. So thank you. I'll pause here because we are out of time.
Thank you very much. Let's give all our panelists a round of applause. Thank you so much for coming here and sharing your perspectives. Yes, so, particularly the story from Ghana and all the wonderful work we've done around coordination. We got some general support from the Conrad Hilton Foundation. And so, at this point, I will turn it over to a senior program officer for Save Water at the Conrad Hilton Foundation, Nabil Chamli, to also provide some reflections on our session today. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. And hi, everyone. So I'm just going to be brief, just mention a few notes from our perspective related to this work that the Hilton Foundation has been supporting with other partners and other donors in Ghana. So first, to just mention that core to our safe water strategy is systems thinking. So we are not only funding infrastructure, but we're looking at different parts of a wash system with a big S, looking at all the enabling environment aspects that need to be improved for the sustainable and reliable delivery of wash services. So in this perspective, one aspect is to support the wash master plans, district wash master plans that were presented to you earlier in this session. So this wash master plan is basically a tool for districts to present their vision and to implement their vision to deliver wash services to all their citizens. We see this as part of our support to the government, because in the end, the government has the legal mandate to provide services, and our support is to help the government and empower the government to execute this mandate. So in other terms, we are always behind the government and working in line with government priorities. We see these WASH master plans as a management tool. So they are living documents. It's not a one-time document. It's a tool to prioritize, to identify priorities, and to execute these priorities based on available resources, because resources are limited, as you all know. The other aspect related to these master plans is also a tool for the districts to guide donors who also have limited resources. So it's a great way for the government, for the districts to guide and to work with donors to maximize the impact of the resources. One important point or feature of these master plans is costing. We just mentioned the presidential compact, how the government is making a commitment to increase its spending in the WASH sector. So bringing this at the local level or at the district level, the costing is very important, because a planning document or a management or monitoring tool without a clear quantification of the associated costs that need to be available for the execution is not a good tool. So this is a very important feature that I would like to emphasize here. And costing is not only for infrastructure, because again, we're talking about services here. So operation and maintenance cost is really important. And because we are working in rural areas with last mile communities where affordability is really a challenge, we know that sustainability requires subsidies. So if customers cannot pay for the cost, someone is paying. Is it donors? Is it the government? Is it a combination of all the above? This is really an important aspect that distinguishes these master plans, because costing is part of it, and we need to always remember operation and maintenance, because in the end, just to bring this back to a previous point, the ultimate objective is to deliver reliable and sustainable services in complex situations where we have affordability issues. So from our perspective at the Hilton Foundation, we started in a pilot in Asutifi North, in the Ahafo region, in one district. We learned, we piloted, and then we leveraged this learning to expand beyond one district. We supported the government to replicate this work in 3 additional districts, and now we are at a point where we're supporting the 6 districts of the region in Ahafo, working on also a consolidation to bring this to a regional WASH master plan. But at the same time, and this is how our strategy manifests, we start small, we replicate, we expand, and now we're at a point where we cannot scale this at the national level, but we support the government at local, regional, and national level through a partnership with the National Development Planning Commission to include this approach in the planning documents and guidelines at the national level, so that the scale can be at the national level. It's a long-term process. Systems change doesn't happen overnight. So this is how we see, though, the steps where we can collectively work as a sector to support the government of Ghana in executing its mandate. So the last 2 points I will make here, and they will be very, very quick. I want to just bring it all back home. And I'm looking at the Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources because they are leading the sector. I think this all will have a much more impact if the reform process can really advance or be hopefully soon concluded, because this is the clarity I think that all partners, government and non-government partners, require for all this to happen. And I'm sure this will also generate more impact out of the compact, which is hopefully now it's a commitment from the head of state that will translate into actual budget and disbursement of funds later on for the sector. So thank you so much. Thank you for your partnership and for the opportunity to provide these notes. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Nabil, for those comments. And at this point, we'd like to thank all of you. I think I forgot to acknowledge one key person in the audience, in the person of Honorable Henry Bachi, the regional minister for the Ahafo region, where we work. Honorable, yeah. I think he came in when the session had started. So I'd like to thank all of you for sharing this morning with us and for all your comments, your perspectives, and what have you. Really thank you so much. I'm sure we'll see all of you shortly. Thank you very much for coming. And thank you, Vida, too, for joining.
Thank you, and bye-bye.